Okay, Rabbi, we are live. Go ahead.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Rabbi Lawrence Zierler, and I'm speaking to you here from sunny South Fallsburg, New York, in the heart of the Catskill Mountains, and where I live year-round. It's a beautiful community and a beautiful part of the country, and I'm really very privileged, grateful to Shmuley Yankelevitz for everything that he does for Uri Tzedek and for the organization, upholding the cause of justice and decency and more for society. The great Kiddush Hashem that is made by Uri Tzedek, and it's an honor for me to be able to share with you these thoughts just as we are at the threshold of a new year. And Rosh Hashanah, we know, was referred to not as Rosh Hashanah in the Torah, but as Yom Teruah, a day of Teruah, a day of a certain sound. Actually, if you look in the Chumash, and if you look at Parshat Balotcha, you'll see that there are two psukim, two verses there. One says, "Uvakila ta'an titka'u v'lo tariu." When you gather the people together for common cause, for assembly, at a time of peace, you should blow the tekiah and not the teruah. And then elsewhere in the same Sedra, it says, and when you go into your land and you are besieged by the enemy, and you see that there is the threat of war, then you have to sound the teruah. So clearly what's implied in the text is that tekiah is a sign of peace and tranquility. It's a positive sign. It was blown, and that sound was made at times of peace and community getting together, community assembly. The teruah was a call to arms. It's something to wake up the people to something serious that's taking place. And yet, in our fulfillment of Rosh Hashanah as Yom Teruah, and celebrating and observing the day through the shofar blasts, we actually sound any number of combinations. We have what's known as the teruah, which is a staccato sound. And then, of course, we have shvarim, three broken sounds. And this actually is discussed in the Talmud, in the Gemara, where it refers to the shvarim as genuche ganach, as a form of groaning and moaning, whereas the teruah is yalule yalil. It is a wavering, a broken staccato sound. So why do we have three combinations? Where we blow tekiah, teruah, tekiah, and then we blow tekiah, shavarim, tekiah, and tekiah, shavarim, teruah, tekiah. Why the three different representations of what should just be the basic teruah sound? And various answers have been given. Some say that the teruah represents the cry of humankind. But according to others, we no longer know how that cry is supposed to sound in its natural sense. Or some say that we no longer hear the cry of men, of humankind in general, that we have become impervious to the sounds of people who are desperate, who are suffering, who are. And so therefore, since we are not sure of what the natural cry of man should sound like, we represent all three. And I think this is actually very important because it personalizes the notion of crying and reminds us that people cry differently at different times and for different purposes. But I think one of the other things that I said before was also very important, and that is that we no longer can hear people crying. We've become impervious. We also live in a society which is death-denying, death-defying, that wants to minimize suffering in the event that it might lead to a panic. There are any number of people who aren't comfortable in the presence of tears. In fact, a survey one was asked or conducted, and it asked people, do you let strangers see you sobbing? And the numbers were interesting. there was 1% that said that they allowed people to see them sobbing frequently. And then there was 19% who said sometimes, 26% said never, and 53% said rarely. So we can see that people are afraid to show their emotions in public. That's seen as a sign of weakness. And what people are missing out on is the fact that, aside from the religious significance of crying and how many times it appears in the biblical text and elsewhere, that psychotherapists and other people who work in mental health have seen great health. Just some of them with you. Emotional tears contain stress hormones and other toxins that get flushed out of your system when you cry. Crying activates the parasympathetic nervous system that helps your body to feel soothed and rested. Crying for long periods releases oxytocin and other endogenous opioids, otherwise known as endorphins. And when those endorphins are released, that dullens pain and provides a feeling of well-being. Crying helps those who have experienced loss to recover from grief. Crying also can activate in others a sign to want to show support and care, which helps one to feel better. And people generally report that they feel better after crying. And so it's really sad that people in society today hold back emotions and feel that it is less than a sign of strength if they cry. But we know otherwise, and our religious tradition bids us to be able to show our emotions. And that the whole idea of bechi is very important. Take the situation of the mourner person when they suffer a personal loss of one of their 7 closest relatives, so that the first 3 days are referred to as Shloshet Yemei Bechi, the 3 days of intense grieving and crying. Crying is cathartic. And it's so sad that we live in a day and age when we deny emotional expression. And indeed, as somebody once said, we live in a time of great peril, and when you cry, it's a sign of the soul sweating. It's a sound of the soul sweating. And tears are very important in that respect, so that we can actually see how soulfully moved we are by the circumstances. Rosh Hashanah is referred to as the birthday of the world. Hayom Orat Olam, Hayom Yamid Bamishpat. Today is the birthday of the world. Today we stand in judgment. And in order to celebrate the world's anniversary, the birthday of the world, we really need to understand better its basic needs, the underpinnings of the human condition, for empathy and caring and sharing and respect for the zulat, for the other. It's very important that we are not hardened by the facts of life, by the situations that persist and prevail and which can dull our emotions, but that we are ever cognizant and aware of the fact that there are people who are going without. In this day and age of a pandemic, surely all of us should be crying for those that we have lost, for the untold souls who have been snatched from us. This year, Rosh Hashanah is going to, in my mind, involve more crying for those who are capable and those who are willing than before. And this year, the sound of the shofar is going to be even more profound. It is interesting that when we blow the shofar and say the blessing, before we begin the fulfillment of this mitzvah, the blessing is lishmoa kol shofar. It is not about just blowing. The blessing doesn't say litkoa b'shofar, to blow the shofar, but it's the end result. It's the shmiyah. It's the sense of hearing that is important, that the sound actually reaches us, and that it's a genuine sound, so that if one if one blew the shofar into another vessel or into a cave and what comes out is just a mere echo, then that's not a genuine sound of the shofar. That's not genuine crying. We want to be able to hear something in its natural state. Tears are a sign and a sound of the soul sweating. Proper care for the ill and the elderly and for society's most vulnerable, for everyone in need. This is cause for crying. How many people remember from the book Great Expectations? Charles Dickens actually speaks about tears. And he says, heaven knows we need never be ashamed of our tears. I was better after I had cried than before, more sorry, more aware of my own ingratitude, more gentle. I don't think one can say it better than that. That really sums up what I said about the cathartic nature of tears and the salutary value of crying as a form of release, but also as a form of actually knowing what it means to recognize the pain that is worn on the faces of others. There is a beautiful Yiddish song that is sung, and I heard it once sung by one of the great cantors of yesteryear. And in the song, it is a story of a young boy who approaches his mother. It's about the interchange between a mother and her son. And the young boy says, is it true as grandfather says, that before God in heaven stands a cup in which he allows the tears to gather whenever misfortune befalls Israel? And that when the cup is full, then Israel's suffering will end. Yes, my child, replied the mother. Of course, yes. When will the cup be filled? He asked. Are the tears perhaps drying up in the cup, mummy? Deeply moved by the child's query and sincerity, the mother's tears fall upon the questioning child's head. Oh God, cries the author of this poem and song, put these tears also into the cup. Our cup runneth over. For sure, the cup is close to filling itself to the brim. And now, as we approach these high holy days, if each and every one of us cries from a place of truth, from a place of sincerity, then hopefully the cup will floweth over, will runneth over, and God will bring surcease to all suffering and struggle and inspire us through our own efforts to undo the damage that we have seen committed against society and our natural and our human worlds. The psalmist King David says, Hazarim b'dima berina yiktsaru, that those who sow with tears will surely reap with joy. Tears are the sign and the sound of the soul sweating. And it behooves us to recognize in each of the shofar blasts, in each of the teruah manifestations and representations, in the teruah by itself, in the shivarim by itself, in the shivarim teruah, in the yaluli yalil and the genuchi ganach, in the groans and in the moans and in the wailing and in the crying. And hearing all of these sounds in the aggregate should bring us to face the reality that destiny stands at our door and that it is only through genuine human efforts and interest in the well-being of others that we will be able to see the cup fill up with tears and see God ultimately bring us to a place of happiness and health. I like to say to people who unfortunately have suffered a loss, you can't say to a person who has suffered a loss, may you know no more loss, because that's really not true to the human condition. There will always be pain, but we hope that there will be smachot of the happier kind to outnumber smachot of the sadder kind. The same word, smachot, is used both to refer to moments of happiness as well as moments of mourning and loss. And so we hope that there will be in life more joys than oys. But it first takes honesty and integrity, a willingness to show our emotions, and be willing to cry and feel the pain of others, and to take honest and significant steps towards Tikkun Olam. This is the spirit of Ori Letzedek, to empower us to be able to be emotionally intact and aware, and to be able to use that awareness to reach the hearts of others so that they feel not abandoned, not alone, but ever connected to both our Jewish community and humankind in general. May this year start with tears and end with joy. Amen.